5:05. Are you ready, John?
Yep.
And we have excused absence for our supervisor and clerk, and I'm assuming that Lynn Durant is probably hung up at work. She may show up or may not, so we'll have to wait and see. But going forward, we're on the solid waste budget. So how do you people want to start? You got questions on it? It's very straightforward in that.
Yeah, I'll just, if
Gloss over it.
it's okay, I'll
Would you
just
like to go
make a
quick?
few comments, yeah. It is pretty straightforward. It's basically the same as last year. We have just renewed a contract with North Country Disposal for 5 years. They have been providing excellent service for us, and the big change, and right now it's pretty much unknown exactly what's happening, but the county and city Marquette are constructing a transfer facility. It's basically going to be a recycling facility. As of today, I'm not recommending that we necessarily join in that effort. Things are in pretty much state of confusion at the landfill, which they have been for quite some time. I attended a joint meeting last spring with the city Marquette and the landfill authority, and where they were making their initial presentation on the new facility. And the question I had of the landfill and the city Marquette after the meeting was, what's it going to cost? And there was no answer to that question. And now, several months later, it was supposed to have actually opened up in September. They still don't know what the costs are going to be, other than 3 or 4 times what they would have been, last spring. So, but fortunately, our contractor is also building a complete transfer station on 492. It's pretty much 90% complete construction right now, so they're basically going through the permitting process. And I'm going to be recommending utilizing that facility. Primarily, everything's going to be the same in terms of the curbside pickup. Okay, we've already got a contract to pick up the garbage and recycling curbside. So the garbage is still going to be going to the landfill. The recycling is still going to be going to a sorting facility. Actually, not a sorting facility. They're actually going to be doing sorting here in Marquette. But basically, they will be marketing, their own recyclables. The part that's really going to probably be the most different would be right now we've got the monthly rubbish drop-off. And that's going well, but as we're going to be losing our site at some point, probably in the near future. So the new North Country Disposal transfer station will be able to do that. So everything could be the same, except it'll just be a different physical location. It's going to be a secure facility. It's going to be manned. So, one day a month we'd be able to, residents be able to haul their rubbish to the new facility. And would actually probably reduce our costs somewhat because we don't have to pay then somebody to, man our facility. Another advantage is with their having their own transfer facility, they'll be able to basically provide services pretty much around the clock. Right now, for example, even on no matter what day it is, but the one day a month, just like every other day of the month, the landfill closes down early. So once you reach that point, you can't take anything to the landfill. So with their new facility, they would be able to, it doesn't matter, because they'll have storage room on their site, so they could take it to the landfill when the landfill is open. In terms of the rubbish, not the rubbish, the compostable material, we would probably be able to do the same thing there as well, except obviously it's not going to be a 24/7 kind of a deal. But we will be able to continue to provide the service into the future. So the way I see it, it's basically going to be just a more efficient overall operation than what we have now at a stable cost that we can, plan for. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
On the recycle on McClellan Street, when you're talking to them, it's split up that the profits are between the city and the transfers, or the recyclable thing.
Right.
If you join it, would you get any of the profits? If Marquette City.
Well, yeah, theoretically, I mean, looking at the landfill advisory board minutes, or authority minutes, that's a question that, the authority's been asking is, how exactly is this profit going to shake out? And like I said, there's been no answers to this point, so it's hard to say. Plus, there would definitely be a charge. I mean, the deal is you can take it, but you're going to have to pay some kind of fee. And the fee, that's what's the unknown right now. So if they don't know what the fees are, how can they possibly know what the profits are going to be? So again, there's very little information that I've been able to obtain out of the whole situation. So, I mean, it's a good concept, but I mean, the point is we're already recycling. We've got an alternative method that's, we're not going to, for example, right now we're single stream, so you don't have to sort it out. 1 week you've got one kind of material, the next week you've got another kind of material. It's the same kind of materials. If you put it out, it's going to get picked up. So, and it will be recycled. Mm-hmm. So, it's just more streamlined, more efficient. It's not that, I mean, we've obviously worked with the county for many years, and the city as well, but, it's just that there comes a point where, you just got to go where it's most beneficial for us.
Yes, Randy.
With North Country, has there been any indication of where they're looking at locations?
Yeah, it's in Nagani Township. It's on 492. It's like just inside Nagani Township.
So it would be, for our township residents, they'd have to transport a little further, basically.
Yeah.
Probably, Nagani limits, 4 miles, maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. So it wouldn't be a big inconvenience. And that's one of the things that we're
Right.
concerned about with, the drop-off is the convenience side of it. An alternative that we have is we have a verbal agreement right now with Pete Otavero to utilize part of his property that's across 492 from North Star Academy, that open area there where he's been moving dirt in and out of. We've got ability to use a 200 by 200 foot area there for our drop-off. If this isn't ready, basically by the time we transfer the property to the new owners and we lose that site, we do have the ability to move then to that piece, which actually is going to be easier for a lot of residents. You don't have to cross the highway. You just go over on Wright Street on 492. The other piece that's impacting this is, you've probably seen in the paper that candidate for city commission, Jesse Schramm, has filed a lawsuit against the city with regard to that site. And that's not necessarily it might be a stopper, it might not. It's really a zoning issue that he's challenging them on, that they didn't follow the proper zoning procedures to rezone that piece of property. So we don't know at this point whether that's going to hold the development up or not. I think the primary thing that's going to hold the development up is what you saw in the minutes in your last packet with regard to the authority's operation itself, the Solid Waste Authority.
Questions for Kurt? Pete?
No?
Any? Lynn?
No, I thought it was pretty straightforward.
I think the biggest thing is notifying people when we make the change as to where they're going to have to go in that.
Right.
And I have a feeling there's gonna be some grumbling because they're gonna have to drive farther and that, but other than that, it's there and available
Right.
to them.
At this point, there's no change,
Yeah.
so.
At least they got a site.
Yeah. Randy?
Just one additional comment. The rate that we've got in here basically is essentially the same rate that the city residents pay for their basic garbage service. The difference is that city residents also have to buy specific bags, which is something that, as we go along, depending upon what happens with costs, the board may wish to consider in the future looking into that, because it does put some measure of control in the individual users in terms of how many bags they use rather than raising the base rate. On average, in my household of 3, we use 1 to 2 bags a week, basically, and they're $1.50 a piece on top of the cost, the base cost. So that's something going forward we might want to consider future years.
One more thing, there is one more unknown, and that is the actual tipping fee for garbage. That, it's my understanding that the authority actually did increase the tipping fee by, I think $5 a ton, but they didn't actually implement it yet. So at some point, it's going to be raised. So this is based on, the current tipping fee, and but if it gets raised, it gets raised. They're just grappling with all kinds of stuff right now. So
With that, looking at that $5 a ton, do you have any idea how that would break down as far as a rate increase for the people?
I have not actually calculated that. No, I did
Okay.
not. But it shouldn't be. It's hard to say, but I'm going to say it shouldn't be like, it's not going to equate to a $5 monthly increase for sure. It'll be much less,
Other questions?
if anything at all.
Any questions on the actual budget itself, people? I just had one, and I asked Lois about it, on, looking at the 560 customer accounts. And I was looking at the hospitalization, and I looked at the cost there. When you look back through this, you look at 30% of one employee who's been charged to this account, and I asked her, I said, that just doesn't make sense. $249 for hospitalization when you have 30% of one individual's.
Actually, there are only 2 employees in this category. I'm one, and Lois is, not Lois, Brenda's the other. And we are not taking the township insurance.
Okay, that answers the question.
That's why what you're seeing there is the impact of the opt-out.
Okay. I was not aware of that until I talked to Lois, and she brought me up. But she mentioned just Kurt, she didn't mention Brenda.
It's going to get confusing because you'll see as we go forward into 2015, there are a number of changes that are happening to health insurance, but one is that everybody is going to be individually rated, and everyone will have different premium rates based upon their age and primarily their age. But so that's going to be a dramatic departure from what we've seen in the past, where we had a group rate, everybody was at the same rate. Nobody will be at the same rate. They'll all be different now based upon age.
So what it sounds like is, as you get older, the rate's gonna go up.
Yes, and what it appears, and this isn't written anywhere, but what it appears is, as the regulations for 2015, 16, and 17 currently stand, by 2017, your health insurance that you're providing has to equal the silver plan that's available out there on the metal plans, and that's where they're driving everybody to.
Question for Randy.
Go ahead.
Randy, does that, in the private sector, we have to adhere now to a 30-hour work week for benefits? Is that going to apply to the township too?
It did as of January last year.
Okay.
I'm sorry, January this year, 2014.
Well, my plan renewed in August and
Yeah.
September, so.
Yeah,
that's
ours renewed. We changed our renewal date to December last year from a November date. So this is the first year that's impacting us, but you saw the impact of that in the 2014 budget. So anybody that's working 30 hours a week has to be offered the health insurance. They don't have to take it.
Right.
And you don't have to force them to take it, but you have to at least offer it to them. In our case, as Kirk mentioned, we've several employees that did not. They opted out.
Okay.
Well, I have another question on the revenue. Can you explain what surcharges are, Kurt?
Yeah, that's, we have for several years now. Our services are provided to basically single-family homes, okay, not commercial properties. So so in other words, commercial people can use whoever they want, to haul their garbage. So basically, they pay the tipping fee, but we in turn tack on a service charge, which is right now $12 a ton. Because the way it works is the township actually has to pay all the tipping fees. So if a commercial person comes in, the landfill won't bill individuals, they'll bill the township. So anybody that hauls in the township has to get a license from us. So we issue the license, but that's spelled out in the license that, okay, we pay the tipping fee, but they have to reimburse us for the tipping fee plus $12 a ton. It's been working out pretty well, although I actually got a call the other day from somebody who had hauled a large amount of, I think it was contaminated soil. Okay. And it's actually somebody who's been hauling in Marquette Township for many years. But they had never realized that they were paying the surcharge until, they had this one event, and I'm sure what happened is they just gave the wrong estimate to whoever they were hauling for and forgot the surcharge. And they said, well, it's a large amount, so like, 100 tons of garbage is more than, or 100 tons of soil is heavier than 100 tons of garbage. Well, it's not. I mean, a pound is a pound, no matter what the material is. And so they may be coming to the board to ask for some relief, but my point is it's something that, we've been doing for a long time. And the reason we did that was to keep the township rates as low as we could, because it's kind of the same as it is in water and sewer. There's actually smaller volumes going in, and it was like, again, our services we're offering to our residents, not the businesses per se. Okay, so that was the original reasoning to do that.
Also, because we're part owner.
Well, right, exactly right, yeah.
So they have to deal with one of the owners, and they happen to be in the township. We are an owner, so we have to go that way. Yes,
Right.
Matt?
And it's
In
our
essence,
residents that
it's
are owners.
exactly that, but then it's also the recovery of our costs for processing the issuing of the license, as well as the financial side of it to get the reimbursement and all that. So that's where the surcharge comes from.
But that's a good point, Ernie, that it's our residents that are the owners, not so much the businesses that are the owners of the landfill. So, it's like back when George LeBlanc was manager, he was coming up, he, had a breakdown of where exactly are your monthly fees going to. And, there were a number of different categories, including, future closure costs, for example, future liabilities. And we charge our residents a fee. Okay, we weren't charging anything for, everybody else. So that was the original reasoning, so.
That brings up, you brought up a good point, future closing costs. I know the landfill itself is putting money away, or supposed to be putting money away.
Right, right.
Should we have to do that for our own benefit? Because if it's not enough, they're gonna come back to all the municipalities and that too, so.
That's true, but it's one of those things where, we do have, and actually it's probably in here.
Somewhere in here.
But we do have, some retained earnings that have not been, looks like, too significantly impacted. They're fairly stable. So,
There isn't that much there.
right, yeah.
I know.
But again, it's going to be an unknown because it's been extremely difficult, not just recently, but for quite a long time to get any accurate information out of the landfill management, basically, so supposedly they're covered, but who knows?
Yeah, they say they're covered, but we don't believe them. I'll just come right out and say it, we don't believe them. So we are putting money away for it. It's part of the retained earnings. It's in our solid waste fund. The estimate right now is that the landfill has another 50 years, in terms of its life cycle. That doesn't mean it's going to last 50 years, but that's what they're projecting. If they do have a failure of a liner, there's going to have to be cleanup. So there are funds that are set aside specifically for that, and we continue to contribute to that every year, basically. And from the general fund, we had borrowed against that several years ago, a number of years ago, that every year we're repaying some back into that to get that fund back up.
Any further questions for Kurt on solid waste?
Yeah, well, I was just going to add one more thing, not to drag this out, but, their annual reports, every year for 30 years, they've been saying, well, we've got 50-year life of the landfill. So it's like, okay, so they're not getting any older. It's like it's going to last forever. So, again, is that real information or not? It's hard to say, but the point is, they're still there, and the fees haven't been raised. So, at some point, they might have to make some adjustments.
Okay, so do we have anything else? And then we'll drop the solid waste, or we'll move on to the other one, which is the fire. Thank you, Kurt.
Yep.
You're more than welcome to stay if you'd like.
If it's okay, I think.
Danny, you had a question.
Yeah, in going over the, and I apologize for not saying this out earlier, but in going over the packet for the fire department, I noticed under the departmental request, that's actually not right. When the department did do their budget, it was, their budgeted amount was $510,044. They took the worst case scenario and did their budget off of that, not the $557,492 that it says here. So I passed out the original one that was actually done by the fire department. So.
Probably answered all of my questions now.
Say we can go home early?
I don't know.
I'll ask Bob if he would like to do a quick review of the,
I guess the first thing is, you want, if you
I
have
guess
any questions.
before Bob starts, I just wanted to clarify what you had in your budget packet that was passed out. Remember at the beginning, I told you that all of the department budgets were going to reflect the departmental request side, and Bob and I talked about this. The departmental request side is all things status quo. My column, the manager recommended, reflects the worst-case scenario. So that's why what's in your budget packet is different than what Dan just passed out. That's why it's different. You needed to have on one sheet both scenarios.
okay, Bob.
I guess if you want to start with questions first.
We can
And
start
go
with
from
questions
there, or-
first. Lynn?
I guess we can just go down the line. But, so what you're saying, Randy, is that the manager recommendations stand regardless of what Dan handed out, right?
Oh, the only thing that's really different is the first item on taxes. Everything else basically tracks with it, but I wanted you to see the potential revenues both ways. It's the same way we did all of the other budgets. If you go down the line, you'll see that even in my column, they almost all are the same except a couple of areas.
But I mean, he doesn't have, there's nothing on manager recommendation on his sheet.
No, not on the one that was passed out. No, I'm talking about the one that's in your budget book.
Right. So what I'm saying is your numbers are still, regardless of what he has, you're still saying 515 for your revenue. 515, 653.
No, what I'm saying is your spread, depending on what the Supreme Court does with the tax issue, is between 510,044 and 557,492. It's going to be somewhere between there.
Okay.
But as you go down the remaining line items, you're gonna see that they're almost the same.
Okay.
Because that's all I wanted to do is to reflect to you what the revenue difference might be.
Gotcha.
But I guess I'm confused because when the fire department did their budget and turned it in, it wasn't based on 557, 492. So I don't know where these figures came from then.
Well, when I got the figures from Dulcie,
Yeah, those are actual figures.
she gave me the worst-case scenario,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we have the 510 from.
Understand.
And that's what, we did our budget off with the 510.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, we had a meeting at Randy on the 2nd, 25th, whatever, and he did the worst-case scenario, and we did, and he put, if we were gonna lose no money to the taxes, he put the figure in then.
Right, and we did, and basically what we did, we've both done the same thing, worst-case scenario. So what we're saying is, if the Supreme Court rules in our favor, we go back into the fire department budget and adjust it based on the actual revenues.
We both did the
Yeah.
original budget was both done with the worst-case scenario,
For the requests.
yeah.
The only difference is, in essence, other than a couple of minor differences, is the revenue side. And I just wanted to point that out. That's how much flexibility you may have. Same thing we did in the other departments.
So you're talking about 40-some thousand dollars differential, depending.
Yeah, it's closer to 50. I think it's like 47,000 was the
We did
difference.
47, something.
47.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we're successful, which we hope we will be, that $47,000 will be available to be reallocated.
Is there a chance that it would be some of that? I'm
It
not
could-
sure.
It could be.
Okay, so it's
We
not
really-
an all or nothing.
You really, no, the Supreme
Judgment.
Court, the difference is, at the Court of Appeals level, they rule on only what's presented, facts of the arguments on both sides. Supreme Court rules on the law. So they look at it, they don't care what you presented. They look at the law and interpret the law and then apply the law. So it could be anywhere. It could be, they could put it right down the middle. They could say, Township, you're absolutely right. You know, this is ridiculous. There's no claim there. Or, they could do anything. They could say, we're not going to hear it. Then the Court of Appeals decision stands, and it'll be the worst-case scenario.
That would be the worst-case scenario for the state.
Yeah.
Absolutely for everybody in the state.
Okay, then let's start with services rendered, charges for services rendered and revenues. I guess I'm confused why last year we had 6,900 and we're dropping down to actual of 995. I mean, that's only halfway through the year, but there's a big disparity there. Are we doing something differently, or,
No, we just don't have as many accidents or rescues. You know, that's, if we have an accident on the highway and we have to do
In the budget.
a lot of cleanup, oil and that,
Oh,
they
yeah.
get charged per hour, per truck, and per man that's at the accident scene. And any supplies we use, floor dry, the pigs, buoys or whatever we put down. So they get charged for that. The same thing if we get a rescue, hogs back, they get charged, you know, those people will be charged to have them carried out of the woods or whatever.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
there just hasn't been.
so you're basing your request then on just what happened this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because you, like you said, you don't know.
It's, yeah, I know it's
By the
kind
end
of
of
a
the year,
guess.
it could be double and. or else
So you
we'd have-
didn't feel comfortable enough, doing like a 3 or 4 year average or something either?
No, because if you look back over the years, it
It's been dropping.
fluctuates up and down
Yeah.
and.
Yeah, the chief and I, all three of us basically went through each of these line items and basically came to agreement on all of them within a very close range. And, you know, and realistically, we're taking, because of what's going on with the Supreme Court, a very conservative approach in the budget. Not saying that that's, you know, recognizing that we're potentially going to have to go back in and make some significant budget adjustments, particularly, you know, if there's, for whatever reason, a large amount of responses, you know, a large amount of accidents, those kinds of things that you really can't predict, you know. So at any event, you know, it may be a $16,000 year again, you know. We just, at this point, don't know, but pending the situations that we've got, we wanted to take a very conservative approach, recognizing that we can always go back and adjust these things if we have the increased revenue, the higher revenue stream.
I have a question. How successful are you in obtaining the dollars from the accident or from the individuals or that?
I would say 95%. Yeah, 90%. We send, there's a company that does our billing out of Houghton, and they're also a collection agency. And some of the insurance companies, if it's not category right, or they want more information on this accident, and what was done and who and what. So it takes a while, but we're pretty good at getting most of our money back.
Most of it come from the insurance company then?
Yes.
Very little of it coming from the individuals?
No, mostly from the insurance. If you have PLPD or whatever, it pays.
What can we charge for it? What do you charge for?
Say, the pumper, the rescue pumper is $400 an hour. And then, I can't remember what it was for per person, $25 an hour. And then floor dry, we pay $7, we charge them $8 or something like that. So it's not, and it's just for the people who are at the scene, not the ones back at the hall. And if there's 2 trucks there, they pay for 2 trucks. And each truck has a dollar amount, then it gets down to the pickups, say for out in the woods and the Argo. So there's a cost for all of them.
Can I keep going?
Keep
Okay.
going.
Electricity, and even in your narrative, you were talking about a lot of your utilities going down. So you're thinking, what's based on, what are you basing that
Sure,
on?
we had both buildings, and we didn't know how efficient this building was gonna be. So it was a high number last year. This year, because we had 6 months in that building, we know what it was,
It was a high budget number last year, you meant?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Now you're bringing it down.
yeah, we just brought it back to, in all the building and grounds and the water and everything else, we really didn't know. And the gas, we didn't know what to expect.
Sure.
And this year wasn't very warm, so there wasn't no air conditioning on. So we're still trying to work on that a little bit. Hopefully, we brought it down and saved money. We get a hot summer someday. It might be higher, next year, but.
Okay.
Just dovetailing, you're going to see the same thing here. Because
Oh,
of
sure.
the winter that we had last year, we're not using that as a typical winter. So basically what Lois and I talked about was with the utilities, just kind of taking a baseline and then tracking as we go along through the year and then adjust for 2015 as we get into the season. So you may see some budget amendments for utilities at both the fire hall as well as here and possibly at the Public Works facility once it's up and operating. So, we're still in that transition phase. We had a lot of balancing issues to deal with in the first winter that we were here. They're not based in real solid figures. They're kind of estimates that we intend to adjust as we go along.
Okay. How about the, in administration?
Okay.
Thought I had these multiplied out, but I didn't this particular one. Workers' comp is just the department request, so I'll have to look at what you got now. Did that change? 43, 48. Is it just a huge jump? And I know you're saying that all of these numbers are from Lois,
Yes,
so.
those numbers were in there when we received our budget. And I guess throughout the year, change, I don't know if they changed the laws or insurance companies or what. And so we just went with Lois's numbers, you know. So it dropped down quite a bit. But that number was in there when we got our budget, so we just left it there.
Okay. That's gotta be a mistake from her then, because the manager's recommending 1776, so yours is just that much higher. I'm confused then about the next few too, contracted services, accounting, computer services. You've got, roughly $1,600 for uniforms, and everybody's saying $3,657 for contracted. It looks like it's been running the last couple of years around $4,000. I'm wondering if some of the expenses of these items happens more in the second half of the year?
Well,
that-
it depends on, contracted services covers physicals, and also it's gonna be covering the fire system test every year. It's a contracted service. And also covers the copier
Yeah,
contract.
administration, okay.
So it depends on how many people we hire and how many, physicals we give out as part of the contract. So, if you hire 2 people, you only have 2 physicals. If you hire 6, it's gonna be more.
Okay,
Computer service,
yep, same
That's-
kind of thing.
that's between 906 and charter.
Dues and subscriptions is kind of the same. That's not quite so bad. Those are the ones that I circled. Miscellaneous, down at the bottom, we got an original budget of 17. I don't even remember that.
That was our fund balance from last year. It was put up into miscellaneous instead of having it on the bottom.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
We used $5,000 of that to remove the hill. So that should be down to 12, roughly. And that's about it.
Yeah, in the 2014 budget, we've used that as a parking place, I'll put it that way, basically, because we weren't sure basically what was going to happen for part of the year. So instead of carrying that down into the fund balance and having it basically just roll into the fund balance, we put it into that miscellaneous that would be there for the department to draw on.
Okay,
It wasn't because we anticipated they were going to spend that 17,000, but it was there because we still had some things we want to do, like the hill and a couple of other items that we didn't really budget because they were going to be contingent type items.
okay. So that makes sense that you went back down to 15
Yes.
then. Okay. The fire marshal's salary is 12.5% increase?
I have no idea.
Am I missing something here?
All these figures were put in.
No, we built in a 2% across the board for all staff.
But it's not based on,
There's
I mean, I took it off
There's
of
two
the
full,
estimated.
there's 2 full-time positions in there now.
And they also, the insurance, if you look at the insurance, it dropped down. So I'm assuming they're taking the buyout too?
Yeah, I had the.
One did.
The tick
Yeah.
too.
Yep, one did, one took the buyout.
But the salary is for 2 positions.
Right, but 118 versus 108, or 104 is,
Yeah, that's,
it's not 2%. It's
Mhm.
12.5, rounded. So it just didn't make sense. It would still be, whether you had a buyout or not, it would still be 2%.
Well, that also takes into consideration their step increases as they're moving along. Rob Cochran is new in that position, so he's getting increases as well, step increases beyond the 2%. The 2%'s on the range. So what Lois does is calculates throughout the year what other changes might occur to wage and rolls it in there as well.
So how
So
many
you
times?
you
would
can't just take just plain 2%. He'll have an annual, he'll be, what, he's in his second year now
Yes.
in that position, so you'll have an annual increase, which is roughly generally, it's about a 7% step between the steps, between the increases, as he moves along in the progression. And then the whole schedule moves up 2%, so that's what you're seeing, the impact of that.
But he would only have one step a year, right?
This year, he'll have one, yes. And depending on what his anniversary date, he might have two this year, might have, no, he's been in there for a full year, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it'd be one. He'd have one step, one increase during the course of the year. Depends on when it falls in the year, how much that's gonna cost.
Okay. Then Ron wouldn't have any steps.
No,
right?
Ron's at the top. His would be a flat 2%.
Still seems like an awful lot of adjustment. Yeah, and then the hospitalization was the other question I had too, so there must be more opt-outs. All right, then workers' comp, the same thing on firefighting. So, I know that's tied to wages and stuff anyway, but
It's a flat percentage.
you, let's see what the new one is. Workers' comp. 5504 is the same. Okay, so I guess I don't understand how this, I suppose that's why there's such a disparity between what the department's requesting and what you got at least $10,000 on that one, except for the new one. Yeah, they're way different.
Did you say there's only one person that is opting out?
Yeah, that's you said. Under the fire
They went
marshal?
from 28,000 to 1,500 for just one person opting out?
Well, there might have been other changes too. There might have been dependent changes. I'm not sure. Lois did that calculation based on what the actual premium would be. But remember, there's an 18% increase built in on the health insurance here.
Well, I agree.
Yeah, but it's so low, anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's dramatically low.
I don't quite understand that. If only one is opting out, I could see if both were opting out going down to that, but
Too bad she's not here tonight. I think I'm
I
gonna have
thought they were
to,
both, but I don't know.
I thought they were both opted out too, but
Those were the numbers that were put in, so that's what we
I'd have
want.
to check this. I know Rob opted out. I'm not sure if Ron did. Ron might have, because I don't see those. They go right through payroll. But I know that Rob did because he sent in a request.
Yeah. I think they both did, but I'm not sure.
yeah.
You can
maybe
check that.
I'll visit with her, I think. 'Cause if we've got, at the end of the binder packet, I mean, the department's got a $47,000 transfer to the fund balance, and the manager's got 10, and then we shift to 15, 515, 388, so that stays the same. I don't know, I guess I'm just a little confused. I had too many questions and arrows and stuff.
Well, that, what you're seeing at the net effect is the difference, the Supreme Court decision potential, basically, with a couple of other minor changes throughout the budget.
So, but how do we end up passing a budget like this with what we said before, a $47,000 difference? Because you've got two ends of the spectrum. I mean,
You do. Yeah, because you're not in control of what the final answer is going to be.
yeah,
That's the dilemma we had with this budget, and that's why we set it up the way we did, to give you both ends, basically, of the potential spectrum, recognizing that you could be somewhere in between there. So, but you don't have the flexibility not to adopt a budget because of that
Right.
unknown. So, I mean, it's,
so you're really recommending that we not go with his higher numbers, whether it's revenue or expenses? And, I mean, because this is your recommendation to take these numbers.
I'm recommending the very conservative approach. As your budget manager, that's my recommendation, is the very conservative conservative approach, recognizing that if and when, and it may not be, well, now it's probably not going to be till sometime in 2015 that the Supreme Court even makes a decision. You may have to come back and make some budget modifications as a result of the increased revenue, if you wish to. So, that's my recommendation as your budget manager at this point, is assume the worst, because you still have to provide the services to the residents.
Yeah,
And
but
if
when
you-
you have these kinds of expenses that, whether it, if you're looking at work comp, and Lois apparently plugged in 55, and you're saying 22, that's not a conservative approach. If there's this reason that it's gonna be 55, we need to go with that.
Well,
Make
it's,
sure we have the funds available to pay it.
what my recommendation includes is a 2% wage increase for all staff, which is different than what's being requested by the fire department. So that's all I'm saying, is I'm applying consistency across all departments of the township, which is a little bit different. But the board still has the ability to come back if we have a decision with regard to what our revenue is going to be and make those adjustments. The only thing you have to do is adopt a balanced budget by December 31.
Yeah.
So, and my conservative column still gives you a $10,000 balance. So you can accomplish everything on the conservative side, recognizing in the departments, we discussed this, and I understand that that's my rationale, is that if we do well with the Supreme Court, there's going to be additional revenue that they then have to reallocate through their funds. They've taken a very conservative approach in terms of estimating on the low end what their expenses might be.
Can you do that through budget adjustment like we do every month?
Well, and there's nothing that would stop the board. Let's assume the Supreme Court rules in February. There's nothing to stop you from reopening your entire budget and, and going back through and making whatever adjustments you feel are necessary to put it back in line. The only requirement you have is to adopt a balanced budget by December 31st. What you do after that is outside of that framework.
But if you're being conservative on your revenue, wouldn't you want to be more aggressive on your expenses at the same time?
Well, not really, because all I'm doing is I'm applying the same rationale through. And now, I'm applying the flat percentages of what workers' comp is and those kinds of things to the expenses. I mean, they are flat percentages. So I've simply applied those percentages. If the wages change, the percentages change. I mean, the dollar amounts automatically change on the roll-up. Some of these, I'm not sure where, Lois came up with, like that $4,800 figure is high, because that workers' comp is nowhere near, it's just not nowhere near that cost. Now, obviously, firefighting is one of the more hazardous positions we have, so they're higher on the scale in terms of percentage, much more so than an office position, let's say. So in the fire department, your workers' comp is higher than it is in other departments.
But not
Other than water and sewer, but I mean in your general operations.
Okay, I'll just have to ask her. Those are really the only ones that I had on the budget, on the fire fund.
I mean, there really isn't much, the department took a very conservative approach, and we're not in disagreement in most areas on that conservative side, recognizing that if the revenue's there, certainly they'll want more in some of the other line items.
Any further questions, Lynn?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Diane? Annie?
Well, just one question, I guess, that Manager Gerard brought up is the difference between the increase in salary.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to explain that, or?
Well, and normally, instead of getting a percentage raise every year, we wait every 4 years and we bump it up. Like for salaries for officers, we bumped it up $15 a month. Well, last time it was increased was 4 years ago. So it works out to roughly 1.5%. And the same thing in the part-time pay, the fire pay, and meeting pay is, instead of bumping it up every year, we wait for 4 years and we just bump it up $1. And over the 4 year, if you took 2% for 4 years, it's 32 cents a year. So we're just bumping it up a quarter a year. So you're saving 7 cents on it. So that's, you know, instead of doing it every year, we just do it every 4 years. Yeah.
So what you're saying is on the administration and salary, appointed and part-time, you're looking at a 2%, you're looking at a 2% increase, and that's approximately what amounts to.
Well, about a 1.5%.
But the
If you-
department request is more than the manager's.
Correct.
Right. Yeah, for the 4-year period.
Now, what Bob's looking for is an adjustment going back 4 years, basically. A stepped increase, which is not typical what's happened with the other staff. There's been an increase, in essence, almost every year. So that's the differentiation, and that's why I put in the budget, in my parentheses, I'm only applying 2% across the board. So that's, again, that's a differentiation that the board can address, however you want to treat that. Yeah, that's why in my narrative, I brought that out in my narrative as well.
And some of the line items for, you know, we have increased, say, the part-time pay increased $1,000, and let's see, meeting pay increased, the pay itself, or the line item itself, I think it stayed the same. You know. Let me find it.
Whichever way you go, you're not talking about a large dollar amount. It's relatively small.
No, I was just looking at the differential between the department request and the manager's request there. And it depends on how we move to accept the budget for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in that whole section, you've got a less than $5,000 difference.
What we did, we bumped up part-time salary for firefighting. Meeting pay, instead of $16 a meeting, it'll go up to $17. On the average, meetings run 3 to 4 hours a night. So, you know, they're not really getting, you know, a whole lot out of it. So, same as fire pay, it went from $16 to $17.
It all depends on how we look at it when we go to the budget at that point in time.
True.
Pete, do you have questions?
All righty. Under building and grounds,
Yes?
number 728.
Equipment replacement?
Jump up to revenue. Why are we only budgeting $100 for fines or parking fines when we're up to $550 as of June?
Well, if you go back through this year, the sheriff department is more involved with handing out tickets. And, you know, if you look back through the years, you know, we have $50, $100. So it all depends on how busy the sheriff is, I guess, you know. We do handle some tickets,
Well, I was going to say, don't we handle some of those also?
yeah, but you know, is it worth their time to spend running from the mall to the Walmart to Target, you know, just to see if somebody's parked there?
Well, it just seems funny that, you know, we went from possibly, estimated $700 to $100, and, when our sheriff's department, hopefully now if we add on the hours that we can stop some of the cars from parking in there, because that is a problem. More and more people are parking there, and they shouldn't be parking there, and they should be ticketed for
You know,
doing it.
and it goes back to is, we can put down $2,000 there, but we get $50 and then,
No, you want something that's gonna be kinda
Right.
accurate,
and every time we do it, we always like to go low, it's like having a bonus at the end of the
Yeah.
year.
All right. Then under building and grounds, 728. Got the things taken out of here for a minute. We got $3,000 budgeted, and as of June, we have nothing.
That's
Last year, we had riding lawnmower,
Yes.
but we didn't purchase it.
No, I did talk to our manager Gerard about purchasing a mower, and he said that building and grounds
Or taking care of that,
were gonna cut the grass, so we didn't purchase one.
okay?
We're either looking at that money for a compressor for the building or putting it towards the generator,
Compressor or generator for,
emergency generator for the building.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that the chief and I and the assistant chief talked about with regard to the fire department with that most recent power outage. We couldn't get the doors open. I mean, so we need to have self-generation at least the fire department, so we're trying to find a way to fund that.
I have got a quote from a company, it was in January, it was $21,000 for the generator, and roughly another $4,000 to have it installed. For the wiring, the permits, natural gas put to it.
Yeah, that's the figure we've been working with, is around 25,000.
shouldn't that be on our budget list for planning for our budget?
Well, yes. The issue when the generators were talked about with the building construction was the board's direction to the chief and I was find other sources to fund it than budget, which is what we've been trying to do, whether it be grants or whether it be a combination of things. And I think what we're down to now, and Bob can chime in this as well, what we're down to now is between the general fund, because it's a township asset. A generator would be the township asset at that facility. Between the general fund and the fire fund, we're trying to find a way basically to fund that so we can get that done. We'd like to have that done before winter sets in
Oh, this year already?
this year.
Okay. My administration ones are taken care of. Under vehicles, 340, pay 340.
Okay?
Let's see. Okay, 726. What do I have on that one?
Supplies?
Supplies, 500. As of June, we only got $44.
Yes.
What's our intent there?
Well,
Last year, we had $290. Now we're up to 500. It's just to make a big swing. I just wonder
well,
what's
it
that?
depends on, if, anything that's, any supplies for any vehicles, headlights or whatever, oil, antifreeze. That's, anything, my understanding, anything that is,
Do you buy
consumable.
ahead, do you buy ahead, Bob, in some cases, for supplies?
We try to keep some oil ahead, some antifreeze in stock, spray silicone, JB80, let's say, sea foam for, you dump in there, some air dryer stuff to keep the moisture out of the air system, air brakes and that.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on, if we start running low, we buy it, light bulbs, whatever, we can buy it. And then we don't have a big stockpile, but when something runs out or gets low, I'll get I'll buy something, put it in its place, so we're never out of something.
It just looked funny, $544 that, $290 the year before, and, it just struck me funny, that's all.
It all depends on what year we have, or,
Yeah. Then on 7/28, you have, $2,000, and as of June, there's nothing in there.
yeah.
What's the equipment?
We put $2,000 in there to replace the headlights for 78. They've been ordered. They haven't come in yet, so they haven't been billed.
Okay. How much were the headlights?
$1,800, I think it
Was
was,
it?
around there. No, I think they're at 2,100. The LED ones.
What's the contracted, on 801 contracted service?
Contracted service is $600 for the aerial. They have Great Lakes testing, they come up, they test our ladders. So under vehicles, the aerial falls under vehicles testing, and then the ground ladders will follow under firefighting contracted services.
Do they do that every year?
It's got to be done every year. And the same thing also would be in there, is pump testing for all the pumps on the trucks. Now it's red power diesel. They'll come up, they'll do the pump test.
Is that the only place that you have this amount, Bob? Because last year you only had $600. Is that anywhere else in your budget?
It is other places, but I think what happened there is when myself assigned the account number to the pump test, it might have went under firefighting.
Okay.
So
Okay, the only other one was 863 is your vehicle gas. Just had a, let's see, what the heck was that?
budgeted was 6,500. This year we spent, or last year, 4,513.
Mm-hmm.
This year so far as of June is
2,200.
yes.
Okay.
Most of our, it all depends on where we go and how long we're there. If we're pumping for a long period of time,
Okay.
we can go through one tank of fuel, 50 gallons, in a couple hours. And not knowing the price of fuel up and
Well,
down.
let's hope the fuel's gonna stay down for a while. Who knows that?
So, we try to keep it every year, the same amount of money in there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go back and look over the history of it, it's been pretty much the same, I think.
Right. Number 940, a fire protection, it's been sort of a little peeve with me, is there anything we can do, can we, like in my email to you, can we make the argument about, you borrow the money from one department, and do you think that should be paid back over a period of X amount of years?
I don't think so.
Huh?
I don't think so.
Why not?
Well, if you go back to the DDA, when the DDA was intact,
Well, first of all, what was the reason for that?
fire protection,
Yeah, no, what was the reason why you didn't pay for it? Was that the purchase of a truck?
purchase of the brush truck from Duluth.
Okay. So that's, when you wanted to buy that, and then, we took that out of the water fund.
No, we didn't take it from the water fund.
No, I
we
mean, that,
just-
he lent you that over 5 years or
Yes.
something.
And that was the board's consent to do it,
Well, that's, I mean, yeah.
yeah. Then after the truck was paid off, and then it went back up to $20,000.
Well, you know how I think, you know,
Yeah. And and I guess the way I think is the water fund, it should be, you know, we get a certain amount of money. We can't increase our millage, we can't do nothing else. You know, I don't think we should pay anything to the water fund, my opinion, and there's other townships that don't. You know, if you're talking about paying it back, you know, and I brought up the DDA, well, when they put the water and sewer out here, the DDA took $552,000 from the fire fund over the life of the DDA. So should that be paid back?
how did we come about a negotiated figure then, years ago? What, you know, that happened, long before I was here. It's come
It
back
was,
to 2006.
Negotiated the board.
Yeah, for what reason?
Well, Kurt thinks he should have more, and I think he should have less, so we came up with a figure of $20,000.
Well, just a little story about, you know, like the road commission, when they do that. You know, not too long ago, I was in Munising, and they did the same thing. Alger needed some funds that Marquette needed, and so they used Jim didn't use his, so they give it to Alger, and the following year, they transferred it back. So that's, should that be the way we do it here?
Well, and one thing you have to look at our budget, all right? We got pretty much a balanced budget with the worst case scenario. All right? We have to start looking at replacing trucks. Our next truck we buy is gonna probably be $600,000. We have $100,000 in there now. We're gonna have to start replacing our turnout because they're getting to the age they should be replaced per NFPA. You're looking at $90,000 there. We talked about buying that land behind the fire hall and eventually put some type of training area there for us instead of, you know, trying to mock up our training. We have a place to do it. You know, right now we're looking at maybe putting plexiglass up inside the building so we can do our ladder training. We're not marring up the walls. So in the next 3-4 years, we can be looking at, you know, $1 million of expenses between the trucks. Our aerial's going down November 2nd. They have some pump work done and some other items. The list was in last meeting's budget or board packet. 78, our Seagrave is going out to Crossroads to get the exhaust replaced because it's already rusted out and it's only 5 years old. Our aerial is 20 years old. The exhaust looks like it's brand new on there. The tank on the Seagrave is cracked. They had to come up and weld it again. 77, you know, there's nothing major, but it adds up over, you know. That truck's 15 years old already. You know, the city, they run their trucks, both pumpers, they're all EMS calls. All right, that's why we bought the pickup to do that. Right now, the city has one of their #1 pumpers down because of the axle. Screwed up the rear axle on it because they run it on every call. What they
See,
do
what
is
you're
not-
saying, what you're saying right now, Bob, is the guts of my email to you that you didn't answer is why I wanted to sit down with you to find out. My question to you is, what's the future of the fire department in 5-10 years?
Well, and I received the email from Dennis saying all these questions to be brought up in the budget meeting for everybody to hear it. Now,
No, he was directed to us to go to each department head, and he said it a couple different times, and that's why I reached out to you.
Yeah.
Because I
And-
want to know, and my email to you was, I'd like to know about the goals of the department 5 years and 10, and you're telling me right now exactly what I'd like to know before, so
But
I
in-
can generate my questions to you.
And also, in your email, you're talking about, we dug out the hill, are you planning to, any additional outdoor lighting and what it's gonna cost? Well, that's to me, that's budgetary, and anything that has cost in it is for the budget. And we took the hill out, yes. We didn't increase the parking and all, so we don't have to increase the lighting on it. And, I was prepared to answer all your questions last week at the board meeting, but the board ran long and,
That's all I wanted, is 10, 15 minutes of your time to go over some of the stuff, and, that's what my charge was, to sit down with the department. I did it with Randy, I did it with Kirk, and I wanted to do it with you. But the other thing is that's what I was looking at as far as the 20,000 was, that's where I was getting at, to do it that way.
Yeah.
So, but why don't, like, if you would list all the different categories, like your trucks and your ladders and all of that, the goals of the department listed down, and put a year, you'd like to do this in 5 years, 10 years, or something like that, and put some prices on it, and just like Kirk had his generators and all this other things, and, the range,
Well-
so we could look at that.
And my understanding, they're gonna start up the CIP, and that's where that should fall in there. And part of that is in the old CIP. And, and you're looking at the 5-year goals or whatever, that was, 2 years ago.
Yep.
I had a list of the goals, and, well, a lot of that stuff changed around because of the building. If we had, all right, if you started up the CIP, you would have all the information, what it's gonna cost, how we're gonna budget it, and down the line. But right now, with our budget the way it is, and the money we're collecting, and we have questions is, say the Supreme Court doesn't take this case. How much money do we owe back? And how are we gonna pay that back?
Yeah.
What is the balance of our building in the, we're paying $80,000 on it right now, a year. And it balloons in 6 years from now? Is it?
From now, yep, 7
You know,
years, 6.
so do we have to have money in 6 years to pay that off? And how much do we need? And so there's a lot of questions that we don't have answers for, and we don't know when a good time is to ask the question, because everything is being moved around. We paid $250,000 from the purchase of the old building on a new building. All right, then, our fund balance as of last month was $246,000 for our revenue, or to pay off the rest of this year expenditures. Once we get down closer, we can take some of that money and say, okay, if we can put $20,000 towards vehicles, $20,000 towards equipment replacement for the bunkers and boots and helmets and that, and $20,000 for building and grounds, and start building that fund back up before we can buy this land, put a garage up, but not knowing, there's so many questions out there we don't know yet, and I don't think anybody knows until after the Supreme Court,
But listening to you, it would be just like me listening to Kirk. He has the same thing, the same things that you're saying about the future and what he's planning for. He has the same things. And it just, you both
see-
have the same ideas and same plans for the future and that. And the
And-
same problems as far as debt and trying to pay for this and pay for that. So you're
Yeah.
both in the same game.
well, and Kurt, his revenues flux, you know, with water sales, sewers and that. Ours is pretty much set straight.
Exactly.
You know, so we don't have no wiggle room for anything, you know? If we did get the $47,000 more, there's other stuff we would like to purchase and then still put some of that money aside. You know, we have $100,000 for vehicles right now. You know, when we built the hall, we had $368,000 saved. And so we're trying to do the best we can what we have. And once the CIP starts up, the new one, then it'll be laid out more. But until then, it's kind of frustrating because
Yeah.
we can write it down and, you know, we know what we want. We know roughly what it's gonna cost. You know, we start replacing trucks, one in $600,000, all right? If the C grade breaks down or we have a big problem with that, we're probably looking around 500,000. So it's a lot of unknowns, you know. We probably take better care of our trucks than a lot of people do. You know, we have Red Power come up every year.
You do
They
a
go-
great job of it, to be honest with you.
We go right through all the trucks. They go through them. Any problems they find, they write down, they give us a report, and we try to get them all fixed.
Okay, we pretty well taken care of, Pete?
I don't know yet. You had a hard time trying to get that truck. You reached out to him, he helped you. He had a hard winter last year. All of his jobs didn't get done. He's looking at an age service group, and he's looking towards the future. He needs some new people in there. He needs to start training those people. He's reaching out to you.
Well,
So I'll just leave it like
All
that.
right.
That's where I'm coming from.
all right. If you look at it that way, we have one person who's gonna retire, who knows when. It was supposed to be last December, it was gonna be in June. So do we hire another person to get his knowledge? And,
You're interviewing now, aren't you?
no, this is for a full-time job.
Oh,
All right, so do we hire another person just because he says he might go in December, and if he doesn't go, he's gonna stick around? If he sticks around for 2 more years, then what do you do?
but the public works needs people because they're not getting all their jobs done.
Well, I think this can go on continually, this discussion here, so. Danny, you have something?
Yeah, I got a few comments, and in defense, I don't believe the fire department ever reached out to Kurt to get that money. I believe it was a board decision to forego paying for 5 years to the water department. I don't think the fire department ever went to Kurt and said, you know, we don't want to do it. I think that was something the board decided on. In defense of Bob not talking to you, Pete, I believe at the first meeting we had this discussion about all questions should be open so everyone can hear them, not be asked separately. And then I guess I'm looking at this and I'm thinking at a budget of $510,000 and you were worried about $250 difference.
No, not. What are you talking about? My
Well, your
reaching
fir-
out-
your
I'm
first-
reaching out for him to ask.
But
some
your first
questions?
one was a $250 difference.
No, I just asked a question. It came out. That's what we're supposed to, ask questions of everything we see in there.
Any other questions for anybody? So, no other questions, I think going back to workman's comp like we did with the solid waste and that, the differential between the department's request and the manager's request is quite a bit in there, so I just, because that's pretty well standard, 'cause that goes right back to percentage of wages and that, so.
Yep.
I look at that and, even on vehicle gas, that's a crapshoot, you don't know. Depends on how often you're called out and that, things like this here. Repairs and maintenance. You don't know. You could come a year with very little maintenance, and next year it could be 10 times what you've had. You have no idea when you're talking about equipment as big as that. And as Bob said with the DDA, I happened to be on the DDA when we did capture all the funds and that, and we did get a lot of static from the fire department, because we were capturing those dollars and that, so. We thought it was legal, some people say it wasn't, and that, and we had some discussions on that, so. But planning ahead for the equipment, I know when we bought the aerial, at the time, I think it was about $500,000, $600,000 at that point in time. Now you're pushing $1 million at least for a new aerial for that, somewhere in that vicinity, so it's one of those things that you have to start planning ahead and putting aside, I should say, some big dollars for some of these equipment and that. I have no other questions. Does anyone else have any other questions or any comments on the fire department's budget? Bob, anything more?
No?
Dan? Have nothing else? Okay, our next budget meeting is on next Monday, and that would be on the
Starting on general fund.
general fund.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be at 5 o'clock, I think, for an hour. I remember right?
2 hours.
2 hours, 5 to 7?
7?
I will not be here. I'll be out of town. I'll be, hopefully make it back for our meeting on Tuesday and that. I'll be coming in Tuesday sometime, so. Yes.
Dennis had some questions and he was gonna ask them tonight. I don't know what they were,
He didn't relay anything to anybody that I'm
No.
aware of.
so.
Probably finish up on Monday then.
We'll leave it open-ended. If he has any questions for the fire department, he can contact you, and if he wants you to be here, we'll go from there on Monday, or even Tuesday, depending
Okay.
how he wants to handle it and that too, so. Anything else to be brought up? If not, I will close the budget work session, and our next meeting will be next
Monday.
Monday.
Nice job, an hour and a half.
Hour and a half.